There's a lot of fun things about buying a new video game console. The potential to play new hit games for franchises that you love, getting to mess around with a new controller, the more advanced graphics, the sheer disappointment on your parents' faces as they have realized that their child won't be a star athlete, but instead a nerd who talks about video games for the internet. Wait, that was just my parents. Whoops. But if you're lucky, that new console will come with a new pack-in title. The pack-in title is always an interesting game to come with a new console. So by pack-in titles, I'm not talking bundles, so something like the PS5 coming with the new Horizon game Forbidden West isn't what I'm going for here. No, the pack-in title has been a thing for many generations. Some well-known ones are along the lines of Super Mario Bros. / Duck Hunt for the later versions of the NES, Tetris for the Game Boy, and Wii Sports, just to name a few. So I made a whole video about the Wii Sports series, and while Wii Sports is a fantastic tech demo / pack-in title for the Wii, it wasn't my favorite. No, as you can likely tell from the title of this video, I believe that the greatest pack-in title for any video game console is none other than Astro's Playroom for the PlayStation 5. Developed by Team Asobi, which is originally a group of the now-deceased Japan studio, Astro's Playroom is the fourth game in this series. It's preceded by The Playroom, Playroom VR, and Astrobot Rescue Mission. Astrobot for a long time has been stuck on the VR PlayStation consoles, which I admittedly don't have much interest in, so this is my first foray into Astrobot's series. This is, admittedly, probably where most people started up with this little guy, with it being a PS5 pack-in title after all, and the game is free, of course. Adding on to that, it's a very solid 3D platformer. With that being said, though, let's ironically take a stroll down memory lane with the PS5's launch game, Astro's Playroom. So Astro's Playroom is a very simple game. It was designed to test out the functionality of the PS5 controller. It's honestly the only PS5 game that I can think of that actually does fun stuff with the controller, not counting the sequel to this game, of course. Astrobot is our main character of the game, and let me just say, I love this little guy. He's just so adorable, and really at this point, he should be the new PlayStation brand mascot. The design is pretty simple, but I think it's admittedly what makes him stand out. I also dig the little blue cape he's got on the back. It's just a really nice touch, and he's a very cute design. What I love about Astro's Playroom is that it doesn't just stop by having you play around with the controller gimmicks. No, it has you go through 4 different levels that are based on different components of the PS5. So not only are you playing a really fun 3D platformer here, but you're also getting kind of a lesson where you're learning about different pieces of the PlayStation 5 console itself. One level is about a speedway based on the SSD, while another is based on a jungle that is also, dealing with the GPU of the PS5. While a jungle level isn't exactly a unique trope for a platformer or Sony games in general, I think having the levels based off PS5 components helps them stand out, and it teaches you, again, about different components in the PlayStation 5. This is also helped by the bits of nostalgia you get whenever you reach the end of a level, where you'll see a different PlayStation console that the level represents. So with Memory Meadow, when you get to the end there, you'll get to see the amazing PS1 boot up screen. That is literally like an orgasm in your ears. I never grew up playing the PS1 much. I played it at cousins' houses, but man, does that boot up screen always just make me so happy. I mainly get more nostalgia from the SSD Speedway section with the PS2, as that was my first PlayStation console, but my heart will always belong to that PS1 boot up sound. The PlayStation nostalgia doesn't stop there, though. See, like any great 3D platformer throughout the game, you'll be tasked with getting collectibles, and each collectible is a piece of previous PlayStation tech. Even the good old PS2 memory cards. Man, 8 megabytes. We have come a very long way since the early 2000s, to the point now where games now can almost take up, you know, multiple, like, hundreds of gigabytes on a system with a 1 terabyte. It's insane, and it's proof that game companies need to optimize their games better. Each level also has a set amount of puzzle pieces that you can collect, which will make a mural in the PlayStation Labo. Throughout the levels, as mentioned before, you can find certain boxes that have previous PlayStation items such as the PS2 memory card, the PS Move controllers, and more. So back to my main point as I was getting on earlier, in Astro's Playroom you'll get to explore and reminisce on a lot of PlayStation nostalgia. It's literally, I get that reference, the game. Tons of cool little gadgets from PlayStation's past are here from the PS1 up to the PlayStation 5, but it doesn't end there. There are tons, and I mean tons of Easter eggs from PlayStation games and third parties as well. Are you a fan of Final Fantasy VII? Well, you can find the Buster Sword in this game. Even Crash Bandicoot's in the game. He even does his funny little dance. It's not just PS1 nostalgia or PS2, as it also goes up to the PS3, up to the PS5. If you want to see Joel and Ellie, they're in the game. If you want to see Aloy from the Horizon games, she's in the game. Kratos is here. Pretty much any big PlayStation franchise game that you love is going to be represented in this game. And there's a decent amount of representation in the game, and it's great representation of PlayStation's past, even if it does technically remind me that the current state of PlayStation IPs is incredibly boring. And don't get me wrong, all of this is nice, but it doesn't matter if the actual gameplay is boring. Well, Astro's Playroom is great in the gameplay department. Astro controls pretty well and has a good variety in terms of moveset. You have a regular punch, a wind-up punch where Astro will basically spin and will hit enemies, a hover where Astro will use his feet to glide in the air, which is kind of similar to the hover nozzle from Super Mario Sunshine. It's extremely helpful. And those are the basic moves for Astro. But each level also has a gimmick where you'll use a function of the PS5 controller to maneuver around the level. For example, in the level Memory Meadow, Astro will turn into a ball where you'll swipe the touchpad to move Astro throughout the level. It's sort of similar to the ball rolling levels from Super Mario Galaxy, just in this case you're using a touchpad instead of motion controls. The same applies to a level like GPU Jungle, where Astro gets a little monkey power-up that allows him to grab obstacles. This one isn't bad. You're basically using the triggers to move upwards. However, towards later sections, you will need to be pretty quick with your timing, as it can be a little challenging. It's kind of a nitpick, I guess, but I've always kind of found the triggers on the PS5 controller to be kind of heavy when pressing down on them. So at times, I swear I'm using enough pressure to grab onto something, but the game doesn't quite pick up on it. This may not be so much an issue with the game itself, rather with the PS5 controller. And let me state, this could 100% be a me thing, where I just don't want to press down hard enough on the controller, but it's been an issue in the 3 playthroughs I have done of this game. I do admittedly find these gimmick parts to be the weaker sections of the levels in Astro's Playroom. The ball gimmick, as mentioned before, isn't horrible, but it's definitely not as precise as I'd like for it to be, and I feel like I have to be extremely careful in how much I am putting pressure on the touchpad during tight sections, which admittedly is the point of these levels, but it's a bit strange to use if you're not used to it. And let me state, it's not the worst gimmick in this game. The game does bring back one gimmick that I wish had died with the Nintendo DS, and that's using the microphone to do stuff. Kinda like any DS game where you're required to talk or breathe into a microphone, this game has it for certain sections where you'll need to progress throughout the level. It's by no means as bad as something like the giant Bowser fights in Bowser's Inside Story, or the flute-blowing sections in Spirit Tracks, but it's still a gimmick I just don't like. You literally can scream into the microphone to make it move. Any noise basically works for it. It by all means works quite well, and I've never had issues with this. I just hate breathing into your console or the controller. I've gotten so good at this from the Nintendo DS and this game that I am considering making a career change into ASMR content. I also don't really like the portions in SSD Speedway where you're using the rocket to move around. You can use the triggers to use the rocket boosters, and while it's not bad, it just feels a bit awkward, and it can be a little tense when you're doing sections where there's electric enemies on the walls. This power-up is just wonky, and I'm incredibly glad it did not return for the sequel. To change the subject a bit on the gameplay department, I do want to bring up one issue I have with this game, and kind of the sequel as well. I think the levels are pretty fun and memorable, but I do find the enemies in this series to be kind of forgettable. They're just kind of generic. They're evil robots, but I can't really tell you much about them. There's the spike guys, the electric guys, and your regular enemy that just kind of runs up to you. Astrobot, the sequel, does do a bit better on this front, but I still find it kind of generic. There is the argument that this series is generic. Again, I stated earlier, it's kind of, I get that reference, the game. Without the PlayStation references, what does this game offer you that you wouldn't find in, say, Mario Odyssey or a Crash Bandicoot 3? And I'll always fight that argument by saying that's somewhat the point of the series, to represent PlayStation history. It's like asking, what's the point of Smash Brothers if it doesn't have different characters from different franchises in it? It's a major part of the appeal. The thing is, though, that's probably my biggest complaint with Playroom, is I think this game is super solid, and it's a really fun 3D platformer. I also think this game has super catchy music, just to segue into that. Playroom is a pretty great looking 3D platformer. It uses the PlayStation 5 components to run very smooth, and that SSD definitely helps. It's cartoony and colorful, and it uses the power of the PlayStation 5. Not to the greatest it could do, but it's pretty good, and the frame rate's really consistent, which I really appreciate. It's also helped by one of my favorite parts of the series, and that's the animations for this game. Astro is just so well animated, and it helps him become so much more likable character-wise. His idle animations will have him just do a lot of fun stuff like dance, he'll play a little video game, and more. He's a great little guy. I love him to death. I'd vote him for president. There's never really a dull moment in this game, honestly. From the moment you boot it up, I think it keeps up a pretty good pace of fun moments. You can beat it in about 1.5 to 2 hours pretty easily. There is a hub to this game as well, the titular Playroom, where you can explore, see the artifacts you find, the puzzle pieces that make up the giant mural on the wall, and more. You also have a gacha machine which you can spend your coins on for other items. In Playroom, you will use the coins that you collect throughout the levels to collect the gacha items. And it's honestly not that hard to get a decent amount of coins on your playthrough, as I think the game is pretty forgiving with the amount of coins that you need. And it's also up that Playroom does not have a live system, thank God. It's something that no 3D platformer should have anymore, in my opinion. And let me state, the reason for that is because Astro is quite a bit of a weak little fella, as one hit kills the guy. However, Playroom is super forgiving when it comes to checkpoints, as there are checkpoints at basically every corner you turn. This just allows you to keep dying and exploring a bit more to find more coins. It also makes this game super accessible to anyone, I think. Whether you're a platformer veteran or you're new to video games, you'll have an easy time picking up Astro's Playroom, as no level in this game is difficult by any means. Some levels might be more challenging than others, but none of them are like brutally hard at all. I'm going to get in a bit more spoiler territory here, so if you've not played this game and you want to, I would recommend you skip a little bit later in the video because I like the views, I'm not gonna lie. But here we go. So if you've beaten all 4 levels, you will unlock the final level where you'll face up with the final boss, and I really dig this boss. It's a big T-Rex. This may not seem like a big deal to many people, but this T-Rex was actually in the demo for the reveal of the PlayStation 1, which is neat. Again, I get that reference, the game. I also like that he has projectile attacks where he just shoots PS1 discs at you. It's a nice touch. Once you beat his first phase, you'll get phase 2 of the fight where he turns into a robot, and this portion can be a little difficult, but it's still not that hard. He just has a wider variety of moves and can hit harder, but the fight is by no means harder, and you do get little extra hearts which let you take up more hits throughout the fight. Just always dodge his big jaw attacks, the laser eyes, and then proceed to punch him in the eye once you get the chance to. And thanks to the power of the magical platinum trophy that you can get, you can take him out lickety-split. And with that, we have saved the Playroom from evil and I guess the fossil fuels in the world. I don't really know how this works. I just play video games for fun. This boss is short and sweet, but that's kind of how I would describe Playroom in a nutshell. Astro's Playroom is a super fun game. It's incredibly charming, and Astrobot himself is frankly adorable and very expressive. It makes you kind of bond with the little guy, oddly enough. It's a very fun game for kids, or just anyone in general who enjoys video games, especially if you have a nostalgia boner. It offers a lot in terms of fun references and fun gameplay. I can't recommend it enough. I do think some of the stage gimmicks are pretty hit and miss at times, with some being awkward to control like the rocket or the hopping robot. However, it is still very, very fun and a good package if you can get it with your PlayStation 5. What helps is that if you have a PlayStation 5, this game is free. Which technically, it isn't free since you have to spend money to buy a PlayStation 5 to own the game, and with the way, prices keep changing for consoles, it's technically not free and getting more expensive. Damn you, capitalism! With all that said, though, if you want a very fun and charming platformer to play, I can't argue with Astro's Playroom. It's a very fun time, and it's quite short. The biggest complaint that I have with this game is that it's so short, and admittedly, it's a bit harder to go back to after playing through the sequel, which, if a game is too short and you have fun with it, is that really a major nitpick? I mean, that's just a me thing, I guess. Thankfully, though, most of my issues with this game were dealt with in the topic of our next video, the 2024 sequel of this game. So next time, we'll meet up with Astro again in what I consider to be one of the best 3D platformers in years. We'll remember Astrobot. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Toodles.